There is a quiet kind of kindness that doesn't feel gentle at all. It smiles while swallowing discomfort. It says yes while the body whispers no. This kindness is often praised, admired, even rewarded, yet beneath its soft surface, something aches. A slow erosion of boundaries. A quiet exhaustion no one notices because kindness is not supposed to hurt, but sometimes it does. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to leave a person feeling invisible inside their own goodness. This is the psychology of kindness that hurts, where care for others slowly becomes neglect of the self. Kindness is supposed to feel warm, light, like something that flows outward without effort. But for some, kindness feels heavy. It settles in the chest like a quiet obligation, a sense of responsibility that never fully rests. This is the kind of kindness that does not replenish. It drains slowly, invisibly, until even small acts feel costly. Not because care is absent, but because care is given without pause. Often, this heaviness goes unnamed. Because kindness is praised, because exhaustion wrapped in generosity looks like virtue from the outside. And so the weight is carried silently. Mistaken for character rather than a signal, there is a subtle emotional moment when kindness stops feeling like choice. When it becomes reflex, automatic agreement, a smile offered before the feeling arrives, a yes spoken while something inside quietly tightens. This is not bitterness. It is not cruelty or lack of empathy. It is the body recognizing imbalance long before the mind is ready to admit it. People who experience this rarely see themselves as struggling. They often see themselves as fortunate, capable, strong. They tell themselves that others have it worse. That needing less is a form of gratitude. That discomfort is simply part of being good. So the heaviness is normalized. Tiredness is dismissed. Resentment is softened into guilt and pushed aside. There is also confusion here, because kindness has brought connection. It has earned appreciation, closeness, sometimes love. And letting go of this version of kindness can feel like letting go of identity itself. Who are you, if not the one who understands, the one who accommodates, the one who never makes things difficult? The mind learns to rationalize the weight, to reinterpret discomfort as maturity, to frame self-neglect as selflessness. But the emotional body does not speak in explanations. It speaks in fatigue, in tension, in the quiet dread that appears when another request is made. This chapter is not about blame, not about fault or weakness. It is about recognition that the first truth is simple, though not easy to accept. Kindness that consistently hurts is trying to communicate something important. Not that kindness is wrong, but that it has been stretched beyond safety, beyond reciprocity, beyond the space where care can still feel like care. And before understanding why this happens, before tracing its origins or explaining its psychology, there must first be permission to notice the weight without judgment, without urgency, just noticing, because awareness is where this story truly begins. Long before kindness became heavy, it was useful. It solved something. It protected something fragile. For many, painful kindness does not begin as generosity. It begins as adaptation. In early environments where emotional safety felt uncertain, being needed became a form of stability. Attention followed usefulness. Approval followed compliance. And love, or something that looked like love, arrived when expectations were met without resistance. A child learns quickly what keeps connection intact. They notice who receives warmth, who is praised, who is avoided when they ask for too much. And so kindness becomes strategy, not consciously, not manipulatively, but instinctively. Being agreeable reduces conflict. Being helpful earns closeness. Being understanding keeps the peace. Over time, these patterns settle into the nervous system. They stop feeling like behaviors and start feeling like personality. I'm just kind. I don't mind. It's easier this way. But what often goes unseen is what had to be quieted for this kindness to survive. Needs that felt inconvenient, anger that felt dangerous, boundaries that risked disconnection. Some learned that their emotions created distance. Others learned that caretaking kept adults regulated, and some learned that being self-sufficient made them less of a burden. In all cases, kindness was not chosen freely. It was shaped by the emotional climate. This kind of conditioning doesn't require overt harm. It can form in loving homes, in families that valued harmony over honesty, in environments where emotions were minimized, rushed, or unintentionally dismissed. The message is subtle but persistent. Your value increases when you make things easier for others. So kindness becomes a bridge to belonging, and being needed feels safer than being known. As adulthood arrives, the context changes, but the pattern remains. The body still responds as if connection is fragile, as if saying no risks something unnamed but deeply feared. This is why overgiving often coexists with guilt, because the nervous system remembers a time when withdrawal meant loss, and loss felt unbearable. What looks like generosity from the outside is often an echo of early emotional labor, a continuation of the role once played quietly, without applause. This chapter is not about blaming caregivers or rewriting the past. It is about understanding continuity. The kindness that hurts today is rarely new. It is practiced, refined, and once it worked, it kept the bond. It preserved peace. It ensured survival in small, invisible ways. But survival strategies are not meant to last forever. They are meant to evolve, and the cost of never evolving them is not immediate pain, it is slow disappearance. The self does not vanish dramatically. It fades between obligations, between apologies, between all the moments when being needed felt safer than being real. Understanding this origin does not weaken kindness. It softens it, by placing it in context, and context is the beginning of compassion. For the self that learned this pattern long before it could question it, kindness that hurts is often misunderstood as a moral issue, as if it comes from being too soft, too passive, to giving. But beneath the behavior, there is biology at work. The nervous system does not distinguish between emotional threat and physical danger. To it, rejection, disapproval, and abandonment register as risk, and when early experiences taught the body that harmony equals safety, kindness becomes a regulatory tool. Approval releases relief. Gratitude soothes tension. Being needed calms the nervous system. This is not coincidence. It is conditioning. The brain learns to associate self-sacrifice with dopamine, the chemical linked to reward and relief. A smile in response to overgiving feels stabilizing. Conflict avoidance feels like survival. Over time, the body begins to crave these signals, not because they feel good, but because they feel familiar at the same time. The stress response becomes activated around boundary setting. Saying no can trigger a subtle fight-or-flight reaction. The heart rate increases. The chest tightens. The mind searches urgently for explanations or apologies. This is why painful kindness is not easily undone by insight alone. The body reacts faster than logic. Psychology refers to this as a form of trauma-adapted attachment, not necessarily from a single event, but from repeated emotional experiences, where connection depended on self-erasure. In these systems, kindness becomes fused with identity. To stop overgiving feels like becoming someone unrecognizable, someone unsafe. There is also the role of empathy. Highly empathetic individuals often feel others' emotions intensely. Their mirror neurons activate strongly, creating a visceral awareness of discomfort around them. Without strong internal boundaries, this empathy turns inward. The distress of others feels like personal responsibility. Relief becomes the goal at any cost. What appears as generosity is sometimes an attempt to regulate collective emotion, to smooth tension, to restore calm. This is why painful kindness often leads to burnout rather than fulfillment. The nervous system never rests. It stays alert, scanning for needs, anticipating reactions. And when kindness is not reciprocated or acknowledged, the system collapses inward. Confusion arises. Shame follows. Why does helping feel so empty? Why does caring hurt? The answer is not that kindness is wrong. It is that it has been hijacked by fear-based wiring. Understanding this reframes the experience. The exhaustion is not weakness. The resentment is not ingratitude. They are signals from a system that has been overextended. This chapter offers a quiet truth. Healing does not require becoming less kind. It requires disentangling kindness from survival. But before that disentangling can occur, another layer must be faced. The emotional resistance that keeps the pattern in place. Because even when the mind understands, the body hesitates, and that hesitation carries its own story. There comes a moment when kindness begins to split in two. One part still wants to give, the other feels tired of disappearing. This is the inner conflict. Quiet, persistent, and rarely spoken aloud. On the surface, everything looks the same. The gestures continue. The listening never stops. The accommodation remains intact. But internally, something has shifted. A subtle resistance forms, not loud enough to be called anger, not clear enough to be named refusal. It often appears as exhaustion without cause, as emotional numbness after helping, as a sense of irritation that arrives unexpectedly and leaves shame behind. Kind people are rarely taught how to hold resentment. They are taught how to override it. So when resentment emerges, it is redirected inward. Self-criticism replaces self-protection. Guilt takes the place of boundaries. And the question becomes, why does caring feel so difficult? This conflict intensifies because kindness is tied to self. Being understanding is not just something they do. It is who they believe they are. To stop giving feels like becoming cold. To say no feels like becoming selfish. To ask for space feels like failure, so the system stays locked. Giving continues, and the internal tension grows. Psychologically, this creates cognitive dissonance. The actions do not match the emotional truth. The mind justifies the behavior while the body absorbs the cost. Over time, this dissonance fragments emotional awareness. Feelings become muted. Needs feel distant. Desires feel inconvenient. This is not emotional maturity. It is emotional suppression disguised as virtue. And yet, stopping feels impossible, because the fear underneath remains unresolved. The fear of rejection. The fear of being misunderstood. The fear of no longer being valued. So kindness becomes compulsory. Not because the heart wants to give, but because it does not feel safe to stop. This chapter is where many feel stuck, aware enough to feel the pain, but not yet safe enough to change the pattern. There is grief here. Grief for the parts of the self that learned to wait quietly. Grief for needs that were postponed indefinitely. Grief for the belief that love must be earned through endurance. And still, something important is happening. Resistance is not failure. It is information. The fatigue, the numbness, the quiet irritation. These are not signs of becoming less kind. They are signs of becoming aware. The inner conflict does not mean the pattern is breaking violently. It means it is loosening. And in that loosening, a small but profound shift becomes possible. Not yet action, not yet change, but recognition. A realization that kindness without self-consent is not compassion. It is compliance. And once that truth is felt, not just understood, the story cannot return to what it was. The turning point rarely arrives with drama. There is no confrontation, no clear decision, no declaration of change. Instead, it comes quietly. A familiar request is made. A boundary is crossed again, without malice. A thank you is missing or feels hollow. And something inside does not rise to meet the moment. The body pauses. The response feels delayed. The old reflex hesitates. This is not rebellion. It is recognition. The realization is subtle but irreversible. This kindness is costing something essential, not time, not energy, but presence, identity. The feeling of being real inside one's own life in this moment. The pain becomes clear not because it is new, but because it is finally acknowledged. The pattern is seen not as generosity, but as a trade that no longer feels fair. There may be sadness here, not directed at others, but at the self, for how long the pattern was carried, for how quietly the cost was paid, This realization does not bring clarity immediately. It brings disorientation. Because if kindness is questioned, what remains? If giving is no longer automatic, how does connection survive? The nervous system reacts to this uncertainty. Anxiety surfaces. Guilt attempts to restore the old order. The mind searches for justifications to return to what is familiar. But something has shifted. Once awareness enters, the body no longer fully cooperates with self. The yes feels heavier. The smile feels forced. The exhaustion arrives faster. This is not regression. It is the beginning of differentiation. Psychologically, this moment marks a separation between kindness and compulsion. The two had been fused for so long that they felt inseparable. Now, they begin to loosen. The realization does not demand immediate change. It does not ask for confrontation or explanation. It simply asks to be honored. This is the quiet courage of this chapter. Staying present with the discomfort of knowing. Not rushing to fix it. Not rushing to become someone new. Just allowing the truth to exist without being overridden. There is also relief here. Subtle, but real. Because for the first time, the pain is no longer misunderstood. It is named, and naming creates space. The kindness does not disappear. It waits. Waiting to be redefined. Waiting to be chosen, again not out of fear, but out of alignment. This moment is not the end of kindness. It is the end of unconscious sacrifice. And from here, something gentler becomes possible. A form of care that does not require self-abandonment to survive. Healing does not arrive as correction. It arrives as permission. Permission to pause before responding. Permission to feel the body before answering. Permission to let kindness include the self without apology. This stage is often quieter than expected. There is no sudden confidence. No clear blueprint for how to be different. Instead, there is experimentation. Small internal shifts. Moments of noticing before reacting. Kindness begins to slow down. Not because empathy has diminished, but because awareness has deepened. The nervous system learns that connection can survive honesty. That saying less does not mean caring less. This is where gentle strength forms. Not as assertiveness, but as internal alignment. Boundaries are no longer walls. They become filters, allowing care to pass through without depletion. Psychologically, this stage involves differentiation, the ability to hold one's own emotional state without absorbing another's, to recognize discomfort without assuming responsibility for it. This is not detachment. It is clarity. Empathy remains, but it is no longer fused with obligation. Help becomes an offering rather than a reflex. Kindness becomes responsive instead of automatic. There may still be discomfort. Old guilt does not disappear immediately. The nervous system takes time to trust that safety is not dependent on overfunctioning. But something has changed. The body begins to rest. Exhaustion softens. Resentment loosens its grip. Kindness starts to feel lighter, not because it is reduced, but because it is shared more honestly. This chapter is not about perfection. There will still be moments of overgive, moments of reflexive, yes, moments of old patterns resurfacing, but now they are met with compassion rather than self-criticism. Integration does not mean becoming unrecognizable. It means becoming whole. The self that gives and the self that needs no longer compete. They coexist. Kindness is no longer something that must be proven. It becomes something that is felt. And when kindness is rooted in self-trust, it stops hurting. Not because others change, but because the internal contract has been rewritten. Care no longer requires disappearance. Connection no longer demands exhaustion. This is gentle strength. Not loud, not performative, but deeply stabilizing. A kindness that can remain present without losing itself. And from this place, the story moves toward its final reflection. Not with answers, but with spaciousness. There is a version of kindness that does not rush. It listens without absorbing. It offers without disappearing. That this kindness feels spacious. Not because it is distant, but because it is grounded. It no longer needs to be seen to be real. It no longer needs to be constant to be sincere. It moves with discernment. guided by presence rather than fear. In this space, kindness becomes quieter, more selective, more honest. It knows when to step forward and when to remain still. It understands that care does not always require action. Sometimes, it requires restraint. The body recognizes this shift first. Breath deepens. Tension softens. The constant scanning for needs begins to fade. Kindness that can breathe does not abandon empathy. It protects it because empathy without boundaries becomes exhaustion. But empathy held with self-respect becomes sustainable. This is not a transformation that others always notice. From the outside, very little changes. The warmth remains. The sensitivity remains. What changes is the internal experience. Giving no longer feels like a transaction. Receiving no longer feels undeserved. Rest no longer feels like a betrayal of character. There is a quiet dignity in this version of kindness. It does not perform. It does not explain itself. It trusts that connection built on authenticity can withstand pause. That relationships rooted in mutual presence do not collapse when one person becomes more whole. And if some connections do fade, this kindness understands why, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Because kindness was never meant to be a measure of worth. It was meant to be an expression of it. In its truest form, kindness does not hurt. It steadies. It supports. It allows space for both giving and being. This is not the end of kindness. It is its return. Returned to the body. Returned to choice. Returned to breath. And in that return, kindness finally feels like what it was always meant to be. Something that flows, not something that costs.